From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good Monday morning. It's 6 o'clock. Welcome to Montana This Morning. Thank you so much for starting your day and week with us. I'm Victoria Hill, and Miller is here with the latest on the weather. Are we going to hear more of the same from last week?
Well,
hot, dry, smoky. Yeah, pretty much?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll go with that.
Fill in the blanks, though. I know
My
there's more
job here is
detail
done.
No, there's more to it than that.
All right, well, you're right. We're dealing with the smoke this morning. The good news is, though, we do start to see that return flow of the moisture, that monsoonal moisture. We dried out this weekend, but that high pressure, that ridge of high pressure that's been dominating, that's going to push more to our east today, and it's going to allow that return flow on the back end of that. Now, if you're all out to the west today, you have a better chance to see the rain. I think tomorrow our best shot here in Billings, although it's still going to be maybe isolated in nature, at least isolated thunderstorms. We may see some widely scattered showers, though. You can see we do have a few clouds out there, but the smoky surface this morning where it's really dense here in Yellowstone County, the air quality is not going to be great today, folks. Sorry about that. 70 at the airport, humidity at 32%, winds out of the southwest at about 3 miles an hour. I love to crunch numbers. Let's do that now. Billings Almanac yesterday, our high got up to 95, a good 6 degrees above average. We'll try to do it all over again today, a little milder than normal when we got up around 64 yesterday. No rain yesterday, so we're starting off on a dry note for the month. I got some numbers here. This is the rainfall deficit for July. By the way, coming off the second hottest June and now the second hottest July on record, and very dry out there. You can see we're over an inch in the hole for the month for Billings, 0.36 inches in Livingston, getting closer to an inch in the hole for Miles City, half an inch in Sheridan, and 3/4 of an inch in the hole for Cody. Unfortunately, just looking at the outlook, not a lot of rainfall in the forecast, even though we do have that monsoonal moisture coming in. Again, if you're on the western side of our viewing area today, a better chance this afternoon. Temperatures out there, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Highs today in the 80s, 90s, even some triple digits. We'll go 96 today here in the Magic City. We're going to have our fair share of sunshine at times, but we'll cloud up later today, but just with a very slight chance we'll see some rain here for Billings on this National Coloring Book Day.
You know, I always thought I was pretty decent at coloring until they came out with those grown-up coloring books with, like that, with all those little details and whatnot. And you're like, okay, maybe I'm not that great at coloring anymore.
You got to have a steady hand on that.
And a very sharp coloring pencil,
yes,
too.
True.
I mean,
that is incredible.
She has to be sharpening that thing like every time she goes in with it.
You probably don't want to down a pot of coffee before you do that.
Yeah, get the jitters. And
that's cool. You fancy yourself a pretty good colorer there, Victoria?
Well, on the basic kid coloring books, yes, nothing like this, but
that is impressive.
But it is soothing and therapeutic too when you do have time to just sit down and start coloring. It gets your mind off of everything.
Sure.
I think you're so zoned in and focused. So maybe if you need a little mental break, sit down with a coloring book and a box of Crayola crayons.
There you go. And if you're like me, don't eat the crayons. I used to eat a lot of crayons as a kid.
Really? Oh, that explains a lot.
See what happened, yeah.
All right, Miller, thank you so much for that weather update and sharing things about your past. I will get on to the news.
Okay.
Thanks. Our top story this morning, turn off those sprinklers. Starting today, Billings residents are under stage 1 water restrictions, which means no watering the lawn on Mondays. The restrictions are in place because the water plant is operating at peak capacity and has been for the past 2 months. Officials say the end of August is the only time water use is this high in a typical year. By not allowing watering on Mondays, water will last the summer and staff will have a chance to do maintenance on overused equipment. Stage 1 restrictions run through September 15th. A wildfire in western Montana has wiped out several homes. The Boulder 2700 fire is only 1,100 acres in size, but it's burning in an area along Flathead Lake just outside of Polson, where several homes and cabins were built. The area is now completely closed and all residents have been evacuated as firefighters try to get a handle on the flames. 150 people are staying at a pop-up shelter in Polson. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Near Lodgegrass, arson charges are expected to be filed soon for the Exit 530 fire, which destroyed a shed and threatened homes. Officials with the Bureau of Indian Affairs say the fire was started on purpose. It's burned around 24 acres and crossed the Little Bighorn River. Investigators did not release any information on who may have started the fire. Turning now to the latest on the pandemic. The White House says last week was the strongest week for first-time vaccine doses that were administered since early June. Yet, the first time in months, the U.S. is recording more than 100,000 new COVID-19 cases a day. The virus claimed more than 8,300 lives in the U.S. over the past month, and the CDC expects deaths will rise in most of the country in the coming weeks. Doctors are now recommending pregnant women get their vaccine. Experts say there have been no findings vaccines impact fertility, but they can protect babies who can get the antibodies when they are passed through the umbilical cord. Pregnant women were not included in the original COVID-19 trials. There are global trials underway right now. It's unclear whether the federal government will enact or suggest any mask mandates or public health orders this week. And as reporter Joe St. George tells us, in some parts of the country, public health leaders have fewer powers now than they did this time last year.
Masks are back and mandates are increasing as the Delta variant continues to surge across the country.
Cases will go up further before they start to come back down.
While the federal government and the CDC certainly have the ability to enact public health orders, many of the restrictions in your community that were in place last year, for instance, came at the hands of local health departments or governors. But across the country, many of those leaders actually have fewer powers today than they did this time last year. According to the Network for Public Health Law, at least 15 states have passed or have considered measures to drastically undermine the authority of public health agencies to save lives. For instance, in Florida, the legislature or governor can now override any local health mandate if they think it violates civil liberties. A similar law is now in place in Ohio, where the state legislature is now allowed to override public health orders by the governor or health department. In Indiana, local governments cannot impose restrictions more stringent than those issued by the governor. In Utah, the legislature can now override emergency health orders too. In Montana, local health agencies cannot limit attendance at religious worship services. Jill Krieger is a director with the Network for Public Health Law and has been studying this nationwide.
We're all for democratic process and getting more voices into the mix. The problem is how quickly the spread of disease can move. What we discovered was some concerning trends that would limit the ability of public health officials, as well as the ability of governors and other state leaders to respond to public health emergencies.
This limited authority in some places could be potentially significant as we enter this next phase of the pandemic. According to the latest government figures, 30 states have vaccinated less than half of their eligible populations. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
Meanwhile, lawmakers are pleading with President Biden to immediately extend the eviction moratorium. It ended over the weekend, and close to 4 million Americans face eviction. Some of those evictions could happen as early as today. Congress could not reach an agreement to pass legislation in time to extend the ban and want the president to take action that extends it until October 18th. The administration says states need to speed up the process of distributing federal housing aid to renters and landlords. Former President Donald Trump has until Wednesday to challenge an order to turn over his tax returns to Congress. A federal judge ruled the House Ways and Means Committee made a legitimate request for the former president's tax returns. The committee wants to see how the IRS audited the returns. Trump refused to turn over the documents, saying they are still under audit. The former president and his lawyers did not comment on the ruling. Late last night, senators unveiled a nearly $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package on Capitol Hill. The legislation is nearly 3,000 pages long and comes after days of work. It's expected to spark lengthy debate before it comes up for a vote. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he hopes that vote will come sometime this week. It will need the support of 60 senators to pass. For the first time, researchers have discovered 9/11 World Trade Center first responders with the most exposure to toxic dust are more likely to develop liver disease. They say continued monitoring is critical for responders, especially those who were at Ground Zero right after the September 11th attacks, because they had a higher exposure to the dust.